There we go. Sorry. Welcome and good afternoon. I also want to welcome those who are joining us online today from New York and many places around the world, because we know that Jill spread her delight and her joy and her love and friendship all over the world. And so we welcome everybody into this space today. One of the beautiful things about the service today, as I was saying, is that we are not only here to honor and remember a beautiful life, but also to celebrate and to laugh together, to cry together, and just to be together as we celebrate Jill. And in the planning of this service, Jill actually had quite a bit of input in the planning, and so it will feel very Jill-y to you and be very much what you may recognize from your time with her. So welcome, and I am glad to be here with you today. I invite John and Janelle up to help us light our chalice. In the Unitarian Universalist tradition, we begin our times when we are gathered together by lighting a chalice, a flaming chalice, which stands for several things. One is it represents the light of truth that we believe resides in everybody. It also represents the warmth of the community of us here together and gathered. And it represents the fire of commitment, our commitment to both each other, to the covenant of this faith that we share together, and to doing good in the world. And to begin our service, I will read a quote from the second book of Timothy, chapter 1. "For God hath not given us the spirit of fear, but of power, of love, and of sound mind." If you'll please rise as you are willing and able. In the teal hymnal, number 1053, "How Could Anyone?" Kathleen will play through the entire song once, and then we'll sing it through twice. Now is the time for us to be here together in our grief, in our sorrow. Someday later, a week from now, or a month, or a year, you will find that your grief has lessened, that any anger or regret or sorrow has faded. In some moments you will remember Jill, and a smile will come to your face, probably more often than not. But also, in some moments, you will be overwhelmed with a sadness that you can't explain or even understand why. There will, over time, be memories that bring you comfort. There may be those that don't. But they will all come and go. And eventually, you'll get used to that. It is difficult to lose someone that we have loved that has been such a big part of our lives. We become aware of an absence, of a space left in our lives. In the words of poet John O'Donohue, he says, when you lose somebody you love, your life becomes strange. You have to learn how to live again with that empty space. And there is no one right way to learn. There's no one right way to grieve. There's no one correct way to adapt and adjust and move forward. Each of us must find our own way. And though each of us needs time to grieve on our own, we must also always return to the communities that support us and hold us, that help us move through and move with the grief. So together we are gathered here to hold Jill's family, to hold her friends, her coworkers, to hold all of you who are part of her community. To hold us all in the midst of a loss, to be reminded of the preciousness of life, and to know that we are not isolated, we are not alone. We are connected to each other, to the mystery and miracle of life, to the universe, and to communities here and like this all throughout the world. So I welcome you into this place, into this space, into this time together, each of you, whatever you might be feeling in this moment, wherever you might be in your journey of grief and remembrance, and whatever you might need from this time together. As we take time here to both grieve the loss and celebrate the life of a woman that touched all of you in many ways, I hope you will also take time to reflect on your own lives. Perhaps find ways in which, in the style of Jill, to step through a door of curiosity with wonder and awe. To take the world into your open arms. Embrace it fully. Live wholly. You may find comfort there. You may find inspiration and beauty. You will probably find some heartbreak. That's what happens when we live life to the fullest. And you will most certainly find grief. But I hope you will find healing and joy and wonder and delight. And most importantly, I hope you find courage. Courage to be yourselves in this world. Courage to face death honestly, both yours and of those you love. And in so doing, to acquire a greater appreciation for life, both yours and those of you those that you love. Our first reading today, these are some words that Jill chose from one of her favorite authors, Paulo Coelho. And this is an excerpt from the Valkyries. And it seems especially poignant that this was something she chose during her last days of struggle, her last months of struggle with the cancer. It says, "Death is an angel," Paulo said. "I have seen it twice in this incarnation, but very briefly. There wasn't enough time to see its face. But I know people who have seen, and I know others that were oppressed by death and later told me about it. They said that death has a handsome face and a gentle touch." The old woman stared at Paulo. She wanted to believe him. "Does death have wings?" she asked. "This angel," he said, "is made of light. And when the moment comes, death assumes the form that is easiest for you to deal with." The old woman thought about that, and then she stood up. "I'm not afraid anymore. I have prayed and asked that the angel of death have wings when it comes to me. My heart tells me that my wish will be granted." She kissed them both. It was no longer important to her where they came from. And she said, "It was my angel that sent you both. Thank you so much." Life becomes strange when we lose somebody we love. Death as an angel comes and takes them away and leaves a spot in our lives where they no longer dwell. And yet, we have the vibrant memories, the beautiful, shimmering light that was Jill's life, living inside our hearts, our memories, the things we say to each other, the things we do together, the way we live our lives and celebrate each moment. This is how Jill continues to live in our lives, in the world. I am going to share with you now. I'm actually going to go up there to do it, so forgive me as I walk. These words that I am now sharing with you are not mine. These are words that you and all of those who loved and shared time with Jill sent into the family, shared with them so that it could be shared today. I did have to edit it down quite a bit. There was a lot to say about Jill. So if you hear your words and they don't sound quite how you wrote them, I apologize. But these are the stories and the memories that all of you who loved Jill wanted to share today. This, I'm not going to go and tell you who said each thing, because that would take us all day. So just know that none of these words are mine, and they all come from you who loved and knew Jill well. And I'm going to begin with one quote that said, "Jill was totally unique and wonderful and was a gift to all who knew her, and she had no imitators." So Jill is born 1973, the day before Thanksgiving in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And several family members shared memories saying, "I remember Jill as a little tiny baby. Pretty sure she was the first baby I ever held. That was special." And someone else, "I was visiting Janelle and John the day she was born. Such a happy day. She was a warm, loving, curious child. She was the first grandchild in the family. A sweet little redhead that captured their hearts from the beginning." Someone said, "Early on, I remember her as a bright and feisty red-haired toddler who grew into a delightful young lady and then grew up to become, quite simply, a good person." There was one story from her childhood that stood out to me, and that was from her brother Jeff, who said, of course, they fought, as most siblings do. Her little brother, Jeff. They fought as most siblings do, but he pointed out that it wasn't so much scars and bruises, but Jill liked to fight with words. And he said she learned languages and used a lot of big words that her little brother didn't always understand. And she would make up a lot of words. And one of his favorite, and that has lasted throughout their lives, is paweek. Am I saying that correctly? Sort of. Paweek. And here's the definition of this word. It is a poke in the belly similar to a tickle, but not too hard, but hard enough so that you know it's happening. And you have to say paweek when you do it. And Jeff would like you all to turn to who's next to you in the pew and paweek them in Jill's honor. A gentle poke in the belly. So after a childhood in St. Paul, growing up here at Unitarian Church, Jill went off to college at St. Kate's and then the University of Minnesota and then Norwich. And a friend of hers from St. Kate's shared this memory. I met Jill during our freshman year in the fall of 1992. I was amazed by her energy and the number of other students she had already befriended in just the first few weeks. That is a theme throughout all of the stories, was the sheer amount of people Jill knew and who loved her. This college friend says, I remember when she was my driving buddy on a trip home from Washington State. We were driving in the dark of night through a rainstorm in Montana, and she kept me calm and awake by singing, I am stuck on Band-Aids and Band-Aids stuck on me, over and over and over again, until I finally found a rest stop where we could sleep until morning. Jill was fortunate enough to get to travel over to Norway and study over there. And her friend Marius from Norway speaks of the first time they met over there. Saying, on Friday afternoons in the 90s, the International Coffee Hour at the Chateau was a place to socialize for students and staff of the University of Oslo. Going there gave a whiff of the big abroad and a feeling of belonging to the rest of the world. University fashion was quite uniform. You wore black. On-campus chit-chat would preferably focus on scholarly or political discourse. You had to sound clever. And conversation would certainly always be had in a low and quiet voice. Then one dull, rainy afternoon, something extraordinary happened. Soaring majestically above the sea of gray, a brilliant red-headed firework lighting up the room. This lady came in wearing vibrant colors and spoke in a powerful voice about exactly the things she was interested in, which was a lot. And if this should not suffice, her accent left very little doubt about her origins. It was delightfully refreshing. After coffee and biscuits were had that afternoon, we went to a nearby pub for a pint, and a little later, a bottle of akavit, the caraway-infused Norwegian water of life, which we consumed in the commune kitchen in the student dormitory. This was the outset of a beautiful friendship and a most exquisite hangover. One of her New York friends later said that he loved her sense of humor, and one of the things she did was teach him her favorite Norwegian words, and her favorite was utadu, which meant outhouse. That's what she remembered. So in 2002, after college and after getting involved with lots of activities in the theater scene here in the Twin Cities, Jill packed up and moved to New York, and this is her cousin's memory of that. Jill and 2 friends bravely packed up in the below-zero Minnesota winter and headed out in a U-Haul to change their lives in New York City. They broke down barely an hour from home, but kept at it and kept going and made it to their dream. I have always found that to be amazing. Another memory was, more than any single episode or event, what I remember and always will remember about Jill is her zest for life and her courage. Jill was brave not just in how she handled her illness, but also in her willingness to leave her comfort zone in the Twin Cities and build a remarkable life for herself in New York. She struck out for New York, found an apartment and a job, made friends, and built a community. No one gave her a blueprint for how to do that. She figured it out and made New York City her own. I admire Jill so much for that. From the friendships she built to her engagement with the performing arts, she built a life for herself that uniquely reflected who she was. The shape of Jill's life doesn't look like anyone else's. It just looks like Jill. But even during all her years in New York City, she never forgot her roots, her family, where she came from back home. And one of her cousins, again, shared a memory of their grandpa, Raymond Miersch's 90th birthday, which was a golfing party, I understand, at a golf course. And she said this was in 2006, Jill and I are not golfers, so we became the drink cart girls. And since Jill lived in New York, she didn't drive very often, so she really wanted a chance at driving the golf cart. And it became clear pretty quickly that letting her be the golf cart driver was pretty risky, especially since we were tipping ourselves with beverages. So there was a river through the course with a bridge that we had to cross in the cart every time we went back to get more drinks. And on one of our trips, Jill got so close to driving us right into the river, all we could do was laugh and laugh. So I know that for the majority of her adulthood, Jill was in New York City building quite a life there, a busy, full, exciting life. And a lot of the memories that were shared were about their time in New York City with her, whether as visitors and her being tour guide and hostess, or as good friends and coworkers. Alisa, Jill's sister-in-law, was telling this story of a time they went to visit and got to go see a live show, be part of the Stephen Colbert show. And she said Jill was in her element planning this trip. And she lived and breathed theater and everything New York. It was an amazing experience I'll never forget, giving us insiders the tour of her often referred to as still too small for Jill city. Jill's email signature was, "Theater is like church. We all go to worship in our own way," which captured her philosophy perfectly. A friend said, "We go to the theater when we want something new and fresh, to explore boundaries, to see different perspectives, and sometimes when we need comfort or an escape." One friend said a regular day out with Jill in the city meant meeting at one of her favorite bars, enjoying a drink or two, going to see a show, and then after going to a favorite food place to eat and talk about what we just saw. Jill was adamant about enjoying the moment, whatever the moment might be. A friend that later moved to New York said, I met Jill at Frigid Festival, where she was a volunteer and I was a performer in town from Canada. Within minutes of meeting, we felt like old friends. Jill from Minnesota and Jillian from Manitoba. She told me, we're going to be friends because I understand Canadians. Jill was my theater buddy, and we shared endless smiles and laughter together. Her smile, her heart, and her sparkle were as bright as the lights on stage. But most of all, I really loved the times we just spent chatting. She was a good friend, and we talked about everything. She had a special kindness and compassion for others that is not very often seen. Another friend said, if you look at the dozens of pictures I have with Jill, many show us with something in our mouths, about to go in our mouths, or at an event involving our mouths. Frozen drinks at Sidewalk, gold-wrapped chocolates at the solstice, Thanksgiving at the church where Arlo Guthrie and family, last corned beef ever at the Carnegie Deli, and so much more. And wherever we were, we had giant smiles on our faces. So Jill was delighted by holidays and celebrations, even as an adult. She still dyed Easter eggs. She attended the Coney Island Mermaid Parade. She watched the fireworks on the 4th of July, and she always went looking in her stocking on Christmas morning for chocolates, markers, postage stamps, and candy canes. I will miss her warm and silly soul. The world is an emptier place without it. So in case we haven't gotten enough of an idea of who Jill is, one friend said, who is Jill? Fabulous. That is the one word that comes to mind that captures the essence of Jill. Someone else said, I will remember her laugh, her fun spontaneity, and her red hair. She was New York City and Las Vegas all wrapped up in one flamboyant package. She was great big smiles, great big laughs, a larger-than-life personality. And whenever I pass under the twinkling lights of a marquee, I'll think of my special friend. A coworker said, before I ever met Jill, I heard her. She was one of the most exuberant people I have ever met. She found little things funny, and her laughter was always contagious. Some days I could hear her laughing and talking from all the way across the office. And on those days, I would look to my coworker Melinda, who sat next to me, and say, sounds like Jilly Bean is in full bloom today. Jill was so very often in full bloom. Her energy, like her voice, filled every room she was in. Jill had a way of making you feel part of something fun and open, something of which you wanted to be a part. It was part of her magic, a welcoming spirit who made you feel you had a friend and knew you belonged. I was amazed how she would constantly find the positives in everything. To Jill, the glass was always half full. And through knowing her, I learned how to appreciate all the small things in life and to make the most of anything that comes my way. One friend shared that over the last couple of years during COVID, and as Jill was moved back here to the Twin Cities, a friend group from New York had a weekly Zoom call. And everyone on the call was smart and kind and funny. And she said it felt like we have our own little Hollywood squares. But I didn't realize until she was gone that Jill was always the center square. I was devastated when we had our first call without her. But now, as I move through my grief, I can feel her spirit with us on this call. She'll be in all of our hearts forever. And I'm sure I'm not the only person imagining her in my square right beside me. Another friend said she was quite a gifter. She was always picking up just the right thing for a friend, a bartender, a workmate, or a family member. In fact, she had a stash in her closet for unexpected bestowing opportunities. And this friend said, just before I left to teach in Bhutan, she gave me a knit scarf she had made with stripes of all of her sparkling, colorful, variegated yarn ends. And maybe that describes Jill best. Sparkling, colorful, with loads of variegated ends that lead to her extensive network of friends and family. Jill wore her enormous heart on her sleeve and was always unapologetically herself. No one could ever beat her infectious laughter. She was enthusiastic and curious and kind and funny and passionate. And that's what I'll both miss and work to carry on in her memory and honor. And to close this time, I want to share a memory from Daniel Stanton, which is a coworker of hers at Harrison and Starr. He says, I met Jill on my very first day at Harrison and Starr back in 2015. She simply walked up to my desk, introduced herself, and said, "Follow me. I'll introduce you to some of my friends." Naturally, I figured this will take a few minutes and loved that I would know a few more friendly faces in the office. However, what I didn't realize was that Jill's definition of some friends actually meant the entire agency. I remember feeling so overwhelmed. How could one person know so many people? As Jill enters her new journey, I know there are many who will be able to guide her along the way. And when my time comes, I know Jill will be there to greet me and take me on that introductory walk. Jill had picked out another reading from author Paulo Coelho, and this is an excerpt from The Alchemist. "There's gold here," he said. The moon shone on the face of the Arab who had seized him, and in the man's eyes the boy saw death. He's probably got a lot more gold hidden there in the ground, and so they made the boy continue digging, but he found nothing. As the sun rose, the men began to beat the boy. He was bruised and bleeding, his clothing was torn to shreds, and he felt that death was near. He remembered, "What good is money to you if you're going to die? It's not often that money can save someone's life," the alchemist had said to him. The man who appeared to be the leader of the group spoke to one of the others, saying, "Leave him. He doesn't have anything else. He must have stolen this gold. And the boy thought, it's true. Life really is generous to those who pursue their personal legend. And then he remembered that he had to get to Tarifa so he could give 1/10 of his treasure back to the gypsy woman, as he had promised. Those gypsies are really smart, he thought. Maybe it's because they moved around so much. The wind began to blow again. It was the levanter, the wind that came from Africa. It didn't bring with it the smell of the desert nor the threat of Moorish invasion. Instead, it brought the scent of a perfume he knew well, and the touch of a kiss that came from far away, slowly, slowly, until it rested on his lips. The boy smiled. It was the first time she had done that. "I'm coming, Fatima," he said. In The Alchemist, in Coelho's book, he tells the story of a young boy, a young shepherd boy, who ends up going on a hero's journey, his own personal legend that he is off seeking. And it begins with a dream that the boy has, and then he goes to see a gypsy fortune teller who tells him that he has to follow this dream he's having to go find this treasure that he dreamed about. And so he sets off on this journey, and he comes to an old king who says, "You need to sell everything you have and keep on this journey. You need to keep going and find out what this is all about." He says, this is your own personal legend. So on his journey, he falls in love, meets a girl, falls in love. He meets the old alchemist who travels with him for a while. He gets robbed and beaten a couple times, and he has quite the adventure. And the alchemist that he meets, the wise old man, teaches him that the most important thing he can do is take this journey to discover his true self. The book's main theme is about finding one's destiny and making one's way in the world. That you need to figure out what it is you really want and then make it happen. You need to follow your dreams. And if you do that, the whole universe will conspire with you to get you to where you want to be. I can't think of anything more appropriate to sum up the life of the beautiful person that Jill was, of the courage she took, of the risks she took to follow her dreams, to be true to who she was, to create the life and lives that she wanted. The other theme of The Alchemist is that this boy journeys and journeys and journeys following this dream, trying to find treasure, and in the end, the treasure was back home all along. And it took him on this journey to recognize what he had. And as I was reading through these memories shared of who Jill was and how she lived her life with all of you, it seems to me that throughout her life, Jill had many homes, many safe and sacred places in which she found love and delight and fulfillment, from Milwaukee to the Midwest, to Norway, to New York. From childhood summers at the lake to European coffee shops, to big and small city theaters. And in each of those homes, Jill found treasure. And she made treasure. It seems to have been a very special gift of hers to recognize and celebrate and share joy. It is obvious that the treasure Jill sought and found in all of her homes was the relationships that she cultivated and nourished with all of you and with herself, the trueness of who she was, and with life itself. She embraced it wholeheartedly, taking it by the hand and saying, "Come on, follow me. Let's go have an adventure together." We're going to end by having an adventure together, singing this song. I invite you to stand if you are able or willing. Kathleen's just going to play the chorus for us because I think you all will recognize it as soon as you hear it. And I encourage you to sing loud. I think that was chosen purely so Jill could laugh at all of us. To extinguish our flame, which brings our time here to an end, I read these words from the book of Psalms. Thou hast also given me the shield of thy salvation, and thy right hand hath holden me up, and thy gentleness hath made me great. There is a special place now for all of us. A strange place, yes, that can be and will be filled with grief and sorrow and loss and heartache. But also a place that can be remembered and filled with beautiful memories and laughter, with joy and delight, with fun and frivolous holiday traditions, with exciting adventures to theaters, to places new and known. And it is in this way that Jill continues to live on in this world, through the light that she brought into our lives that we continue to share with others and with the world. I have a couple announcements to make. First, there is going to be a big celebration in New York that all of Jill's friends there are putting together on September 25th. And if you want to take a trip, head out there for that. You can see the back of the program or go to Jill's Facebook page for more information on that. And there will be, after we end this service, time for refreshment and mingling in the parish hall. You're all welcome to join there. Most especially a very special toast with some maple syrup, which was one of Jill's favorite treats. So please don't miss that. I am going to lead the family now out into the parish hall where you'll be able to greet them there. And Kathleen is going to play us one final song.